Hi, my name is Yaz.
I'm Kurran.
My name's Riaz.
I'm Adeel.
And my name's Shina.
Today we're going to be talking about words, the connotations behind these words, how they're used in modern society, and in particular, the N-word. So I'd like to open this up by saying none of the views expressed today, should be taken in the wrong light. We're doing this to promote conversation, and there's no racist intent behind this at all. However, I know this is a controversial topic, and I want to be very careful when I do speak about it. However, I do think it's important to speak about things like this. So, the topic I'd like to speak about is the N-word and how it's all right for certain parts of our community to use it, and not all right for other parts of the community to use it. So, in particular, when it's used in the black community, it's not seen as derogatory, and it can be used as a greeting between people. We've seen this. It's been uptaken in the media. It's been uptaken in songs, in films, and almost to a point where it's become normalized. And however, if it's ever used by people of a different background who aren't African American or black, for example, it's seen in a different light altogether. And I believe that's discriminatory. Either everyone should be allowed to use the word or no one should be allowed to use the word. That's my opinion. I open up to the panel to hear your guys' opinions on the matter.
I think you have to take into notice the previous history associated with this word.
Yeah.
It's very easy said, or you should or shouldn't use it. I want to use it because black people are able to use the word, and you want to be able to sing songs and use the same words that you hear and stuff like that. But I think you have to understand the history behind it and the difficulties that black people had to overcome so many years ago, and how even today it's still important. There's still a lot of inequalities between black people and other cultures, races. So I think you have to take into context that, and if it's just forgiving the fact that I can't use that word, maybe I would like to, but just having that sensitivity to it, I think is important.
I was thinking that different words have different meanings depends on who's saying them.
Yeah.
So you could say, like, you have to take into, like Riaz was saying, the connotations that it comes with. So for example, if a kid says the F word, but an adult says it, you'll take it differently. Because the connotations are different in different scenarios. So in the same vein, if a white person says the N-word or anyone else says the N-word, it comes with different connotations compared to when another black person says it to another black person.
So what I'd like to say in this instance is that, are we saying that every time someone of a different background is using it, they're using it with malicious intent? Are they always using it in a derogatory manner? And are we also saying that when a black person speaks to a black person, that they can't be using it in a derogatory manner? Surely the word has its connotations, irrespective of who's using it.
Yeah, well, as you said at the beginning, I think with this, it's very much down to the sort of the history of the word and where it's come from. And obviously it does have very racist connotations and origins. And the way it's used now often isn't in a racist light at all. It's often used in many rap songs, pop songs, things like that. And that carries forward to sort of, just general lifestyle. And a lot of people in the black community, but also in other communities do use it, who are people who clearly aren't racist and don't mean it in racist ways, but it's used as sort of like a brother, hey brother or something, that sort of term.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, I don't really agree with it, but then I can understand why it is used in that sort of term. And it does seem to be sort of another word than the word used in a racist term. It seems to be two separate words to me, but then of course how can you separate that?
Yeah.
I do think it's like it's really interesting the idea that this word has it's almost like changed over the last 100 years or so, from a really negative word used mainly by white communities 100 years ago to now a fairly positive word used by black communities now. What was particularly interesting is the idea that you alluded to, Yaz, by saying that if a black person says it, it's almost assumed that it's positive, and it's more difficult for it to be received negatively. And conversely, if a white person said it, it's almost assumed to be negative, and it's more difficult to accept that positively.
Yeah.
And that's why that's interesting, is because I feel like particularly in American society, segregation, even though in law it was abolished around 50 years ago, I think that specifically with black communities, in my experience with black communities, they try to hold on to their culture as a sense of identity. Because throughout the slave trade, black people were taken from their homeland and forced to work in a foreign land, and they lost their identity. They were property. So from my personal experiences, I've got family members that are really, really keen to maintain their culture, maintain that identity. And I think by taking that word that was used negatively from the white people and now sort of, using it as our own, it's our own word, we're the black people, we get to use it now. I think that's just more of it's almost like segregation, but the opposite way. Like we've taken this word for
You've empowered yourself, kind of.
Yeah, we've taken it away from white people, and white people can't use it. And it's difficult to say whether that's fair or not, because I mean, you could also conversely say that it wasn't fair for white people to use it in the first place.
Yeah.
So
I want to tell you guys a story. So I was on the bus the other day, and a couple of younger people were sitting in the back of the bus, and they were playing the song. And during the song, the word was mentioned. So everyone was singing along, and you realize at one point in the songs, the people who weren't black or from other backgrounds stopped singing as the word came on. And those people who were black were able to say the word almost carelessly. And, these children often will not understand the connotations behind the word, but even for them, it's been drilled to them that this is a word that one part of the population can say and another part can't say. And I understand the point you've made about empowering yourself and taking back your culture and all these kind of things. But let's imagine today that there was a word that was used by, for example, the white part of the population, and they said no one else except for the white part of the population would be allowed to use this word. Would we all be okay with that? Would we all just accept that and say, oh, it's okay, it's something that they've accepted for themselves, and yeah, that's it?
But I think there's a basis for not using this word. Every time someone prevents themselves from saying it, it's kind of appreciation that we should never go back to racism. It's a reminder that it's not fair to you think back to the history you taught in class, and you're reminded of yourself that it's not okay to use a word that has been used in the past to discriminate black people. So I think it's important, and it's not really a big cost to the individual. You're not really losing your freedom a lot by appreciating and being sensitive around the issue.
Yeah.
I think the way the word's going, as you just said, of course, in the past, well, first of all, of course, many people still living have lived through incredibly racist times. It was very recent in our history as humans, in the last half century. It's obviously still exists, but it much less so. And as Riaz just said, the fact that a lot of the world, large populations, just refrain from using it is obviously progress, and it's excellent that's happening. As Riaz said, it is a reminder that it is a racist word. Yeah. The fact that people often in the black community still use it is perhaps acceptable, because it's it is alluding to them. It's sort of a word that's transformed from a very negatively connotated word towards them. But I don't know, perhaps we're in a sort of transition period where it will eventually be phased out. This is just perhaps halfway there. And yeah, I think we need to continue.
But, it's like not just the N word. Like every culture has its own version of a racist term that they're called, that only they're allowed to use. So like if you look at Pakistani people, they have Pakis, and then just in general in the South Asian culture, when the British were ruling there, they used derogatory term against the native South Asians, and they have their own terms for the derogative terms they use, but the white people aren't allowed to use that against those people. It's the same across the world. Like the indigenous people have racist terms used against them by the Australians, and then they're not allowed to use them back, but they use them within their own culture. So I think it's like not just a black people thing, it's like a culture thing. Every culture has a term that was used against them that they now hold with themselves, and they use it to identify with each other. And just on top of that, I think the reason that it's becoming more normalized nowadays is just the rawness of slavery is slowly just leaving, just like the mentality of most humans nowadays. So if you look in countries like in America, it's still more raw because it's more recent. Compared to the UK, it's more distant, so it's less raw here. You'll find more people using the N-word more liberally. But then if you look at somewhere like South Africa, it's even more raw. Like you will find even less people using that word there.
So my next question to you guys would be that should people be allowed of not that culture be allowed to use it when they're not saying it in a negative light and are speaking about it in terms of discussion. Like, for example, would it be wrong for me to use it in this podcast today when we're simply discussing it and we've assessed that there's no malicious intent behind it? Or would that be a red flag that would just stop right there?
I think it's sort of like it means different things to different people. So if it were one person, it's still instilled in them that it's a bad thing, then they'll take offence to that word being used against them.
What I'm saying is just because I'm of one particular race and someone's of another particular race, the fact that I've used it has now got negative connotations. Isn't that in its own way a form of racism, a form of discrimination? You know, I also want to say that, you know, current generations of white people or any background shouldn't really be held accountable for mistakes their ancestors made or people in the past made. You know, we're now treating them, giving them one set of rules and someone else another set of rules for things that had no effect on them at all, or not no effect, but were of no result of them, is what I want to say. And I understand you guys' points. I think it is very empowering when you can take a word that was used against you negatively and use it as a sign of your, you know, of your betterment and your prosperity. And in that sense, I can understand it. But you think in the future it would be better if everyone was to phase out these words, or if we were to continue the same way we are now, with everyone from their own culture being allowed to use it only?
I think the problem is the fact that there's still racism existing today, and especially in America, there's still a lot of prejudice towards black people. So in a perfect world, maybe in the future, where everyone is you know, treated equally, then sure, you know, you would have no worries about using that word. But I think, you know, taking into account what it's like today in certain parts of the world, you know, depending who you're talking to, you should be aware of, you know, the connotation associated with the word.
Okay. Any closing remarks for anyone before we close up? All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. I know this has been quite a controversial topic and a bit different to the kind of topics we usually talk about on this channel, but I hope it's been interesting. Please leave any feedback you have below. Thanks.